This is the Apparelist Podcast, designed to bring you real-life conversation about high-level topics relevant to the decorated apparel community.
Well, what's up, Apparelist family? It's June, and we're leaning full throttle into summer. For many of us, it means family vacations, some much-needed PTO. If that's you, maybe you're finding yourself listening to this somewhere on a beach, hopefully, and I'm also jealous if that's the case. Or maybe you're listening to it after you've had some disconnected R&R, which I also fully support. So whenever you're listening to this episode of the Apparelist Podcast, you know you can find us on all the major platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and even directly on the apparelist.com website. I can't think of a better way to heat things up for your business this summer than to sit down for an honest conversation with Jayson Tompkins, Chief Digital Officer of STAHLS Fulfill Engine. And let's face it, he's pretty much a celebrity in the apparel decorating community. And Fulfill Engine was and still is a game changer for so many of you listening. So welcome, Jayson.
Thank you for having me. Those are some very kind words. So I hope I can live up to the hype you just put on me.
Oh, whatever. You know that you are well loved in the industry, well respected. And honestly, like, all of that's true. I mean, frankly, Fulfill Engine has been very game changing. Which I do want to talk about that specifically. But first, I kind of want to start with a really broad industry overview. So, obviously the decorated apparel industry has changed dramatically over the past decade. I would say, in your opinion, what forces led to the rise of on-demand decoration, and why has that really accelerated recently?
Yeah, I mean, after COVID, there was just a huge turn of businesses realizing that the overhead, the infrastructure needed to support 3PL and doing kind of the traditional ways of doing fulfillment started to change. Consumer behaviors and expectations, that the Amazon effect of wanting to get something quickly, and like, how do you pull that off and still have diversity of like the personalization and the customization on products. And so I think that's the other thing we're seeing is just hyper personalization across the board of people wanting to feel like what they're buying is unique and for them. So you kind of add all that up together and you kind of hit this peak of what print on demand can bring in terms of value and quality to the end purchaser. And you kind of get this perfect storm that ended up creating over COVID and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned COVID, but, obviously that, God, I don't know why. I just feel like I repressed all of those years. That's obviously feeling like a while ago already.
It wasn't COVID itself. It was that COVID just accelerated what was already happening. So it's not like it created the trend. It's more so that it just accelerated the behavior of those.
Yes, and that is like such a good point. And I think it's something to really remind everybody of is like, it's not that this was a brand new concept, with COVID, but you're right. It did accelerate it. I'm curious, kind of going back now as we kind of backtrack through those years and even before those years, things, as you mentioned, looked slightly different, and it probably looked different than like as compared to when Fulfill Engine launched. Right. And so let's go back to those early days when you were really kind of getting this thing off the ground. What problem were you trying to solve for decorators at that moment, based on what the industry looked like at that time?
Yeah, we were essentially taking everything we had learned, building it for ourselves, and then trying to figure out how can we bring a solution that is based on software, but also based on kind of a new way of operating. And that was probably the hardest thing for us at the beginning, was more or less trying to go to decorators and be like, oh, by the way, your entire shop floor is going to work differently now. And so we had to learn over time that like, oh, actually, the way we were doing it certainly wasn't perfect. It still isn't perfect today. And so I think that's where a lot of our growth happened, was just listening to decorators and taking feedback from them. And that's kind of how Fulfill Engine was really built, was just listening to the feedback of our partners.
But I think you have to, because, right, if these are the people using these platforms and doing this day in and day out, and you're building a tool for them, that's where you would want to start, right?
Exactly. I know it sounds like common sense, honestly. But when we first started, we were like, "Oh, we've come up with this really cool way of doing something, that is kind of new, and we think this is the best way to do it." The reality was, we had a good way, but it got even better by listening. So it kind of is both ways of partners helping us and continue to improve the solution, but then we can also bring new processes to them and teach them. So it's not just software, it's an entire solution that we're, able to bring to someone.
Right, right. So I'm curious. So obviously now we are hearing this word print on demand, POD, all whatever term you use. But what's interesting is I really feel like, the quote unquote on demand means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And that's not even just like in the apparel side, that's in the printing industry in general, right? So for you, how do you define true on demand decoration? And then the second part of that question is what separates it from like a traditional production model?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something I scream from the rooftops that it's not just about MOQ1. It's not just about doing, units of one. It's about my definition, and some people have different definitions, but my definition is producing what you need, when you need it, where you need it. Like that is in its simplest form what on demand is. And it includes bulk orders. Like on demand can be a 10,000 unit order, but it's about not taking that order and then sticking it in a warehouse in hopes that you sell those units one day, right? Like that's the model shift of being truly just in time. And we talk so much about sustainability in our industry, and I can never tell if someone's coming from a standpoint where they actually care about sustainability or they're just using it as a buzzword to try to get attention to it. But to me, there's nothing more sustainable than print on demand because you're literally producing what you need for the person who's buying it at that moment and at that time. And I think what our community and the people who are very involved in print on demand have brought to the table is quality and speed. And that was something where 6 or 7 years ago maybe the quality wasn't there, or 10 years ago maybe the speed wasn't there, and now we're able to kind of intersect all of those things together to where print on demand can have the effect as if it was being held in inventory, as if something was screen printed ahead of time. So it's a fun time to be in print on demand.
Oh, I could not agree more. Always a fun time to be in the industry, but right now, really seeing this kind of explosion is been pretty cool. I kind of want to go into this a little bit deeper and really dig in because bulk ordering will still have its or still does have its place, right? There are a lot of scenarios that do call for this. For those decorators who are still heavily focused on bulk orders, the thought process is you don't necessarily have to replace it. You should if that's your business model, right? Like there are a lot of business models to consider, and you cannot apply everything across the board to everyone blanket, right? Because everybody's different. But what would be the biggest business advantage of like maybe adding on demand, and personalized production to your business model, or if there's if it's time to consider the switch, what are those big benefits and what are those things that need to be evaluated?
Yeah, I don't think it's a switch over. I think it's additive. I think it's new revenue. I think it's new opportunities for you to sell to your clientele. And truthfully, like it's 2026. If you're not already doing some type of on demand or doing some sort of techniques that you can do quantities of one or just in time production, like you've already fallen a little bit behind. But the good news is it's really easy to catch up, and that's in large part thanks to so many equipment manufacturers, so many partners out there that allow you to jump into the on demand space. And there's no shortage of education out there in terms of how to launch it. And certainly that's a role we really like to play, and STAHLS certainly plays, and certainly Apparelist plays. So this community we have is so willing to educate and teach, even if it doesn't mean you're not working directly with us. Like we try to show that with the POD conference that we have. There are just so many amazing companies in this space that will teach you how to do it. It's like, why not? It's efficient, it's profitable, it's scalable. Like why would you not want to do it?
Right. I want to go into that a little bit deeper, but first, what I'm hearing is You're not saying bulk printing's dead. You're not saying screen printing is dead. You're
No,
saying
not at
there's
all.
this complementary piece of it that you should be considering and doing.
Absolutely. It's funny. I see traditional sounds so funny when I put this in front of POD. I see traditional on demand. And yes, on demand has been around long enough now that we can start saying traditional on demand. Okay. And what I mean by that is facilities that have done, like, were born out of on demand and they have really never done bulk. And I see these facilities, they're getting into bulk print techniques. Like, they're buying, DTF carousels where they can do bulk DTF jobs, or they're investing into, Rock Cornette brother into their high capacity DTG systems, or they're going out and selling screen printing and partnering with someone who does screen printing. So, like, it goes both ways. Like, on demand should get into bulk. Bulk should get into on demand. Like, why would you limit yourself to one decoration technique or style? Like, it just seems silly to me.
Right. Okay, well, I promised I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about like that educational component. And so now's the time for that. And you mentioned there are still shops that, maybe not adopting this business model or looking into it. I think something that we hear often is their hesitation is, oh, there's a lot of complexity, or I don't understand this, or I don't have the right software, or whatever, whatever your excuse, or
Hmm.
I hate using the word excuse, but let's call it a spade, right? What technologies or workflow innovations like Fulfill Engine have made on-demand decoration scalable today when it wasn't necessarily practical years ago?
Want to level up your skills or empower your workforce? Meet iLearning Plus, the online education platform powered by our parent organization, Printing United Alliance. With on-demand courses and certifications, iLearning Plus helps print professionals stay ahead of industry trends, sharpen their expertise, and grow their careers. Whether you're elevating your skills or training your team, we've got the resources to keep you competitive. Printing United Alliance members save 20% on all courses and certifications. So get started today at ilearningplus.org and build a stronger future in print.
Yeah, I think solutions definitely play a big part of that. And, this was kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that Fulfill Engine was, as much as we have liked to say it was this big open set solution that people could run alongside other solutions, it was a little more closed than we would have wanted it to. And so we've spent a lot of time over the last year, a lot of effort to make it be much more flexible for people to use. So where they don't feel like they have to switch their ERPs or their solutions over in something they've been doing for 10, 20, 30 years, sometimes even longer. And I think the other hesitation that people might have is, if you have someone who's been running your shop floor for 20 plus years, like, they're comfortable, right? So
Yeah.
it it kind of reminds me of people who are hesitant to use AI. It's like, I'm gonna make an analogy here because I see it where people are like, "I don't wanna use AI," and I'm like, "It's 2026 and you don't wanna use AI." Like, to me, that's insane. That's
Yeah.
pure insanity, and it's the same thing with on demand, and I think it's about having an entrepreneurial mindset. It's about being curious. It's about being willing to explore, and I think if you have those things, you're probably already doing on demand. And if you're not doing on demand yet, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not thinking like an entrepreneur, but it also might mean you're just comfortable with your current business. And that's okay. But I think there's no better time to explore something new. And with technology like we have with AI and with new solutions that help you do on demand, there's like no better time to try it out because entry, the cost of entry in terms of time and the cost of entry in terms of like having to purchase new equipment, it's so low. And so I think that's why it's a great time to get into on demand. I would have said it was a great time 5 years ago, but I'm biased. So uh, I think at this point, it's 2026. Why not get your feet wet trying it?
I mean, isn't that how most people listening to this got started in the business anyway? They were creative, they were curious, they have that entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, go back to that if you've lost it, right? I mean, it's not too late to find that again and to like explore the on demand as sort of that mindset.
Yeah.
I really think. So.
I think that's a cool thing about our industry. to kind of get into our industry, I almost think of it as like two paths. Like one is you're part of a family, generational business, right? And there's a lot of people who are part of that, and those businesses are really cool. STAHLS is obviously one of those businesses. But the other path, and this was my path of getting industry, is almost just like no one wakes up as a kid and is like, one day I just want to print t-shirts, right? So it's to your point, like people in this industry are entrepreneurs because like you just don't fall into this industry unless you had an idea or you had an opportunity, you were in a band or you were creative.
Right.
And honestly, that's why I love this industry, because they're like surrounded by all these really creative entrepreneurs. And I think that's why this industry does some really cool stuff. So back to your point, just being curious, being willing to try something new. That's why On Demand's a good fit for it.
Right. So, I mean, you've talked about some of these misconceptions surrounding On Demand. Oh, it's too complex. Oh, I'm just comfortable. All these things. Are there any other misconceptions that you hear a lot when it comes to the On Demand discussion?
I think the thing I hear the most from people who sell, this could be a distributor, it could be a team dealer, it could be someone in fashion, as well as decorators, is, wait a second, am I going to like cannibalize these super profitable bulk orders by offering On Demand? And is it actually profitable? And I hear that quite often. And, the answer is, for one, people are going to go find someone who can do it on demand because there's enough people at this point. So if you're worrying about cannibalizing your volume, it's more so you're just going to lose it outright. That's obviously my opinion on it. But then there's also new revenue to go get. And I think that's a misconception as well. Is like, you're not just insulating from losing volume and losing revenue. You're actually giving yourself the opportunity to go get new revenue with new programs you can set up once and then they just run. And now you're off selling to the next client or offering the next great offer because you've set up a program that's set for On Demand and it just kind of runs itself.
Yeah. All right. So now we talked about kind of the past. We've brought ourselves to the present. So as you look into the next, let's say 3 to 5 years, what trends do you think will have the biggest impact on decorated apparel? And this could be anything. We don't have to limit this to obviously, just On Demand. We can talk about like AI, which you brought up. We can talk about, all these e-commerce integrations. We can talk about automations. We can talk about hybrid solutions. I mean, what do you think? What are the big players coming up?
You hit a lot of them, a lot of those things. I think everyone has heard about AI. So I'm just gonna save you from hearing another AI speech here. Okay. Even though I am very passionate about it and I try to be our company's champion around it, I'm just going to save you from having to hear about it. Yes, AI is going to have a huge impact in our lives, on this industry. But here, I'll take a different angle and approach. I think fashion brands, and I think fashion in general, I think high-end brands, I think the suppliers like Sanmar and SNS are going to continue to elevate the quality of blanks that we can actually do print on demand with. And because of how great the technology has gotten on the actual printing itself, we are going to continue to see an elevation of the type of, blanks and the type of brands that we get to do print on demand on. And who's driving that are the end consumers. They want better brands. Like they want unique feeling decoration techniques. Like they want texture. They want stuff to be shiny and glittery. Like I'm wearing, I'm a company man, so I'm going to talk a little bit about STAHLS Flex Style and our Liquid 3D. Yeah, of course, because I like shiny stuff. And I think that's the general trend. I certainly see it from my kids. They don't wear just regular stuff anymore. It's like everything has some crazy shiny component to it. And you used to have to do all that stuff in bulk. Like you used to have to either source transfers from someone like STAHLS. I love how I just keep making my own little shout outs here. Or you sourced it from overseas and you had to do huge runs. And now just there's so many cool new technologies that allow you to do that at low quantities, sometimes even quantities of one. That's where I think we're going to keep heading as an industry.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just curious to hear your response to this because, obviously these are all things that are impacting our industry. Um, and you mentioned this earlier in the podcast, and I put a note in my mind to come back to it. But you mentioned the sustainability aspect, which I think is something. I mean, if you have paid attention to Apparelist at all since its inception, you know it's something I'm very passionate about. And I do agree, like only printing what we need when we need it is a huge advantage in that conversation. And I do think that this is going to continue to drive and have impact on our industry going forward because now we're seeing lots of things like EPR laws, recycling laws, reuse laws, all of these things. You can't put PFAS in chemicals anymore. All of these things, right? We are starting to see, and I do think it's going to start more heavily impacting our industry beyond just being a marketing ploy. So where I'm going with this, I'm curious to hear. So with this sort of explosion of access to being able to order these personalized things, do you think we saw an increase of people ordering stuff just because they had such easy access to a print on demand and thus started ordering a bunch of stuff they didn't need and thus almost being less sustainable? Does that question make sense? Because obviously you start to get these big players like Temu and Shein who offer all this stuff on demand and very fast, but you get it and you're like, I hate this. Even though it's personalized to me, I hate it. Now I'm going to throw it away. I mean, how are we seeing that rhetoric even start to change? And I think this goes back to what you're just talking about, quality blanks, but
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear you expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the quality of the blank itself and actually caring about the sourcing and caring about that brand's message, right? Like, look, I'm wearing a Allmade hat here, right? Well, uh, a branded hat. Like I went and got to see it firsthand, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the amount of work that some of these brands do to build a sustainable model from collecting the cotton to the dyeing process to the cut and sew, like it's unbelievable to know what goes into actually making a t-shirt. And I think a lot of the brands out there, there are plenty more besides Allmade that do a really great job in terms of sustainability. But I think people care about that, and it's up to us as an industry to also take that message and pass it along to the end consumers that like, hey, when you're buying this shirt, there was a lot of work that went into this and a lot of work to make it actually be sustainable. And you know what? That end purchaser, that consumer, they're not going to want to like just buy that shirt and throw it away because there's like essentially a message and a story behind that shirt. And since it was made just for them on demand, there's a larger story to be told there.
Yeah. I love that we get to be a part of that storytelling. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's up to us because the end consumer at the end of the day, if we don't make it about that, then well, they're just buying a t-shirt.
Right.
And then we're just all selling a commoditized product. Is that what we want as an industry? Do we just want to sell a bunch of like apples?
No.
No, of course not. I want my special cider that was hand picked. And
Oh, well, Jayson, I would love, I mean, obviously we could talk about this because it's something you're very passionate about and I'm passionate about. We could talk about it all day, right? But as we sort of round out this episode, where can people go to kind of connect with you and go a little deeper if they have a lot of questions or they maybe have some additional misconceptions or whatever? Where do they go to find you?
fulfillengine.com is a great starting point. We have a lot of resources there. We're going to continue to grow the print on demand community. So Apparelist does an incredible job of education, and you guys really really kind of lift the industry up with your education. So really big shout out to you guys. I know you've got some pretty cool events coming up here soon. A little Nashville tour, I believe. Pretty awesome. So, yes. So, I mean, certainly, I think that's the other cool thing about our industry is there's so many great trade shows, so many opportunities to go visit facilities. So it's not just about, Fulfill Engine. It's about the partners that make all of this, of what we do happen. And we've got a lot of partners who are always open to hosting. So again, it comes back to what we said earlier. We're kind of beating a dead horse here. It's about being curious. It's about having that entrepreneurial mindset. It's about being willing to explore new technologies, whether it's software or if it's hardware, whatever it might be. And this industry has the partners who are willing to share their quote unquote trade secrets and their secret sauce.
I love it. Well, thanks for the plug. Now I feel like I don't have to do it. So, um, but I will say, so yes, to reiterate what Jayson just said, visit Fulfill Engine. You can find them, on their site. There's lots of different YouTube videos that STAHLS just in general puts out. We've even got an upcoming webinar with STAHLS that, will be available on demand to anybody who registers for it. You can find STAHLS at a lot of different industry events, working with its partners, lots of good stuff going on there. And then, of course, again, you can find Apparelist Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and apparelist.com, of course. Jayson, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.